Thank you. Okay, and I think we are live. So guys and girls, let's wait for this audience to start building up. We have got a great night ahead tonight. The Sunday night is back with co-pilot, one of the great thought leaders and providers of services to the real estate industry for, I think, nearly 3 decades. Seth, is it 3 decades?
2.5, Tom. No, I started in real estate in 1996 when I was the young age of 18.
So everyone that's coming on here, I'm letting you know that I'm excited today because we're going to do a deep dive into what we think real estate is going to look like in the future. What are some of the norms that are going to stick with us? What are some of the things that we're going to go back to? Seth has got one of the best helicopter views of the real estate industry. I know it from the quality of the conversations I have with this guy and have had for over a prolonged period of time. More so recently, he's also, I would say, the best agents, whether you go to REB or whether you go to Rate My Agent or whether you go to any award criteria, the best agents in Australia are pretty much clients of Seth. And he's the co-founder of CampaignAgent. And many of you that are watching this know that probably the thing about my training paradigm and the way that I see the world is that you've got to be an attraction agent to succeed long-term sustainable. I totally understand the concept that in the early stages, you will be interrupting people on the phone and be reaching out. But when you start looking at, the James Tostevens, which I know Marshall White's they are clients of yours, aren't they? Strong clients.
Absolutely, one of our bigger clients. Absolutely.
Okay, when we start looking at all the big clients around the country, there comes a point where you actually get so much positioning that people come and see you, and that's where Seth comes into it because his business provides services both in marketing and in financing. But Seth, you're in your mate, can I ask you, how long has it been now that you've been in lockdown in Victoria? You're in Melbourne. That's where you live, and that's where your businesses are.
Yep. So I'm in Hawthorne right now, and we went into our second lockdown on August 3rd. So we had about 6 weeks off where we weren't in lockdown, but we have been in probably one of the strictest lockdowns in the world. And and that was part of the reason why I wanted to reach out and have a chat with you today, because this is, I'm going to shoot somebody if they say the word unprecedented, but this really is globally, nowhere else in the world is really doing what we're doing right now. So we're sitting here hoping to get out of lockdown. We thought next week, looks like it's going to be longer than that. And it is causing absolute sort of chaos and stress and angst down here as to what we're going to do. So I wanted to have a chat with you and really think about from a Melbourne perspective, but also from an Australian perspective is what's changing and how do we need to think about as a Melburnian as we come out of it, and what can our friends around Australia teach us about coming out of lockdown and this new environment that we're seeing. And I'd sort of like to talk to you and share some of our insights as well from CampaignAgent.
Well, Seth, firstly, from your own perspective, has it been it's been bearable? Otherwise, you wouldn't be here.
Yep.
But how hard has it been, and does it get worse by the week, or do you get more used to it by the week?
You know what? I think, Tom, we had a really big shift a couple of weeks ago where we are now allowed to do one-on-one open for inspections, and so property can now be sold. We're still doing digital auctions, but by the same token, we can transact down here, and it has been a monumental shift in the attitude. I think there's a real positivity and energy. I think you sort of look around Australia, we're seeing really interesting dynamics out there. Lots of buyers, not necessarily a lot of stock, but there's energy and there's deals to be done. And as we sort of sit down with our clients, there are not 10, there are not hundreds, there are thousands of properties sitting on their books ready to come to market. And where this week was the first week where we really started to see some volume coming to market. And it's funny, when volume comes to market, smiles come to real estate agents' face. And we saw that this week. So there's light at the end of this tunnel. I think we're all desperate to get out there and actually start doing deals, getting big opens and really start to build presence. But baby steps, and we're getting there.
Now, Seth, Sydney, Queensland, New Zealand, they've all been down not the same path, but similar paths, and there's some learnings. You've got clients. Can I ask you, do you have clients in New Zealand?
No, we don't. Not yet.
No, you don't.
Not yet.
Okay, no. But one day I'm sure that you will, because that VPA campaign agent. I mean, I've got to tell you that if that product there, I would singularly say, is the one thing that if my agents and the agents that I trained had access to, previously, they would have been able to fast track their success. I mean, there are some things in life that are good for every stakeholder, right?
Yep.
And when they're good for every stakeholder, they seem to meet the criteria of good, fair price, fast, seamless, and it sort of ticks everyone's boxes, and it's never a hard sell, because it sort of just makes sense for everyone involved in it, but I'm curious, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but I'm curious what the research and the feedback you're having from around other places that have come out of stage 4. What are some of the learnings? What can the Victorians learn?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're seeing a couple of trends that are really interesting. So we have good visibility around what campaigns and VPA are doing. And the big shift we're seeing is we're seeing $8, $9, $10, $12,000 campaigns post-lockdown with not an ounce of print in them. We're sort of looking at these campaigns, and it's almost like, where is the campaign coming from? Because I'm showing my age, but I remember when you could spend $1,000 and get domain, realestate.com, real estate view, the whole shebang. And what we're seeing now is, coming out of COVID, is digital advertising is accelerating rapidly. And agents are selling a whole heap of different products, bringing them to market. And whether it's video, whether it's all of these pitching and digital signing tools, are all being paid for by the vendor. So pretty much everybody's not only selling advertising now, they're actually selling their own internal workflow back into the vendor so that they can sign digitally and fix it. It's a fascinating dynamic. And we're seeing the explosion of social media campaigns, and it's really interesting sort of watching how this is going to play out, because I don't think we have a good idea as to what is and isn't working, because every single client we have is selling 250,000 hits. And we sat down one day and figured out, well, we did 7,000 campaigns times 250,000 hits. Somehow, there are going to be 3 billion views of these properties, and there's only 220 million Australians. So we're trying to figure out what's real, what isn't, what's working, what isn't. And there's some real question marks there, Tom, right now. And so you're seeing print as a space has sort of disappeared. We're still trying to figure out what that means.
So Seth, a lot of that would have been triggered off because during the earlier lockdowns, News Corporation made the decision to close a lot of their papers, so I presume that sort of has fast forwarded where you're seeing the absence of print. Would you say that that's fair, or was it happening anyway?
Listen, I think it was happening before, but we've moved 5 years in 5 months is what we're seeing across the board. I mean, there's been some really interesting dynamics, like the North Shore up in Sydney. We're seeing a new newspapers coming up where you're seeing and people are saying, well, listen, maybe we do need different alternative paths. It'll be fascinating to see what happens down here in Melbourne, Tom. The agents basically built their own empire down here back in 2010, sold it to Fairfax for an absolute fortune. All did very, very well and have been strong supporters. But we talk about habits taking 30 days to build a habit. It's now been 6 months of a habit of selling all digital campaigns. We're really interested to see what happens in terms of, does the habit of selling big newspaper campaigns in the wealthy AB demographic of Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane come back? Flip side, and Brisbane's important. So our Queensland friends are on fire from what we're seeing. Like, their VPA and the sophistication with which Queensland is approaching vendor paid advertising, I think has been a little bit behind. I say that respectfully, but campaigns weren't as big up there. But I'm seeing really interesting things happening in the Queensland market where they're selling bigger and bigger campaigns. Those wealthy areas of Brisbane are getting campaigns that look very similar to Melbourne and Sydney now. I think there's a lot of guys doing a lot of great work up in Brisbane right now.
Seth, vendor behavior. You've got a really good, view of vendor behavior, because your business model is pretty much, you've got a vendor that, pays an agent who then pays you. What are you seeing? What are some of the changes you're seeing in vendors?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Tom, because I'm not sitting in the living rooms like an agent, but I get this sort of a different view, and we're seeing vendors splitting into two really distinct camps. I think the biggest surprise for COVID has been cash. We have never seen clients pay as quickly, and there has been as much cash in the industry. I've never seen anything like it. So we were expecting everybody to go broke. We were expecting everybody to be in hard times, be in really difficult financial situations. Yet, whether it's JobKeeper, whether it's unexpected markets, whether it's reduced costs, I'm not really sure. But we're seeing real estate businesses for a start sort of have strong cash flows. And we're seeing that in half of the vendors. So half of the vendors have a lot of cash. So interestingly, the worse COVID got, the more people paid for their marketing upfront, which was a really interesting dynamic. And we think it was because of JobKeeper. We think it was because people weren't going on holidays. We think it was people didn't have as many expenses, mortgage holidays, but about half the community had a lot of cash. The other half are really struggling and they're really stressed, and they're becoming increasingly difficult to deal with. So we're seeing that you've either got buyers who are confident, cashed up, or vendors who are
vendors,
vendors who are confident or cashed up, or you've got vendors who are pretty scared. They're not at that edge. They're not quite into the point of being forced sales, but they can see mortgage holidays stopping. They can see JobKeeper ending. They can see that old fiscal cliff we talk about coming. And we're seeing the pay later part of our business remain really, really solid. But there's some trepidation there we're seeing. The nice thing is they tend to be motivated sellers. So they're coming to market, they're going to do a deal. I think as this audience knows, there's a buyer pool to do it. And those vendors are coming to market ready to do a deal. So that's been interesting. Not exactly what we expected, sort of the best laid plans. We did not forecast that we'd actually see an increase in upfront payments. I think the other thing we're seeing on the vendor side is an amazing comfort with digital signing, digital transacting. They're doing a great job, I think, because they're working from home, they're dealing with Zoom and all the rest of it in their professional lives. So when an agent comes to them and says, great, I want to do a full digital workflow, I want to then go through and do contracts online, whether it's through Realtor or Sign, whatever it might be, but they're using these digital platforms in a much more sophisticated fashion than we saw 5 months ago. And so the agents are getting smarter, but the vendors are getting smarter too. And it's coming together to really allow some long-term interesting changes that we're seeing in the marketplace. So in that sense, as a tech guy and as a software company, this has made our lives so much easier because we can do digital contracts and everybody's ready for it, agents and vendors. But as an agent, you need to think about if you're still doing paper and if you're still signing up a Form 6 on authority or a sales agreement in the living room and expecting that to be normal, you need to move real quick because all of the best competitors out there, every single one of our clients has moved to full digital workflows, from authority to contract of sale, and increasingly, paper just doesn't exist in terms of forms and contracts.
So, Seth, I'm beginning to think to myself that Zoom is probably the biggest technological transformation I've seen in my life as an adult. I mean, this concept now of Zooming with someone 6 months ago was close to zero. It wasn't happening, right?
Absolutely.
It wasn't happening. Now it's like second nature. People's diaries, one after the other. What you're sort of saying is that you've seen that sort of extend further with the way that a vendor or an agent sort of, do business. And you're saying it's far more comfortable for a vendor to feel like, hey, yeah, I'll just sign on that iPad.
Yeah.
I'll sign on that phone, you know?
Yeah, it's socially distant, it's smart, it's quicker, it's easier. Yeah, the vendor's getting both an easier and a safer experience, which really matters right now. And let's be honest, the agent's getting a safer experience too, because as an industry, we need to keep ourselves safe. So that means we need to socially distance, and that can be hard when you're a salesperson looking to close a deal. I mean, you need to be there for your client. But the nice thing here is I think we're getting some digital tools that allow us as a sales industry and professionals to keep ourselves safe while we're also giving vendors a pretty amazing service. And Tom, the interesting thing we've seen out there is principals of these top businesses. And I'm thinking of one of our clients, Harris, did a brilliant job of just grabbing COVID and then used it as a vehicle to really push through digital workflows. They were getting, so they're working through as a business, dealing with all the normal blockages and challenges you have. But COVID became this beautiful motivation or sort of tool for change within the business. And I don't think it's too late for principals who haven't done that yet to really jump on board and move to these digital workflows as quickly as possible.
Seth, buyer behavior, any changes that you'd be able to interpret and mention today?
Yeah, listen, Tom, that's a tough one. In some ways, Tom, it's a question I wouldn't mind asking you because you're probably closer to this. So I'd like to have a conversation with you about that one. We're seeing interesting stuff around my other business, is a print business. We're seeing some people really struggling with physical engagement with agencies. They want to come to the open and then get out. So we're seeing some really interesting trends there. But with buyers, again, this embrace of digital has been huge. And the biggest thing we're seeing is just the energy, where especially in WA and South Australia, we are ending up in financing loans where the property is selling and settling before we can pay the agencies. So, campaigns that used to take 90 days, they're done and dusted in 7 days. Like literally, they're on the internet and they're gone, and people are settling in cash money in 7 days. And that's certainly not every campaign, but I haven't had a complaint from a Western Australian or South Australian agent about selling the property before I can transfer the cash to them. Which I think buyers out there, there's a lot of motivation there.
So, I mean, I'm shocked. Even a client of mine, Taney Jane, sold 10 properties in September, and they physically couldn't see the properties. He's in Melbourne, and I mean, they were subject to I think building inspections.
Mm-hmm.
But Seth, I mean, that just says to me the amount of pent-up energy by buyers to consume meant that they were prepared to go past the point and say, I'm prepared to buy now. I think I've got less competition now. I think that once restrictions are over, this thing's going to go crazy like it is in the rest of the country and what has happened in New Zealand. So I'm actually going to back myself. I've driven past the outside. I've gone online and looked at it, right? I mean, there's got to be a real disaster for me not to go ahead with this purchase, but that wasn't happening before, Seth. People wouldn't buy a home without sort of seeing it inside, but now they are. Is that, you reckon? Yeah. Do you reckon that that's got to do? What's that more? Is that more that technology solves that problem, or is the demand from buyers so strong that they're prepared to do it business?
Listen, if I'm going to be honest with you, Tom, I think those are special cases. I don't think we're going to see a transition to digital purchasing. I think that there's always going to be people who need to transact. But what we're already seeing now is that you open the floodgates and you allow one-on-one inspections. So we can only do private inspections down here, and deals start to get done. I mean, I was talking to one of our big Burundara clients down here in Melbourne. Doors opened at 7 a.m. on Monday 2 weeks ago. By 11 a.m. that morning, they'd done 4 transactions. And that's just a great example of people were waiting, money in the bank, ready to go and hit it. I mean, we need to keep in mind that once COVID comes out and you sort of strip back this pandemic, the macro environment we are dealing with is like nothing we've ever seen. Interest rates are the lowest they've been in the last 2,000 years. You're never going to see anything like this. Literally, there's never been this before, ever. You've got a government which is going to be pumping in $200 billion into the economy. And we've got banks who are essentially being released from their responsible lending obligations. As a finance company, we're looking at this and we've never seen anything so stimulatory in our lives. Interest rate, unemployment's nowhere near as bad as they said it was going to be. I mean, if you were going to create an environment for a real estate party, this is sort of what it looks like. And yes, it's going to be dampened by what's been a really difficult year, but the macroeconomic conditions for us as an industry are really exciting. And I think we need to keep in mind that almost the doomsday stuff we heard 6 months ago is already being peeled back. It's already, house prices are actually going to rise now, and unemployment's only going to be at 6.5. It's not going to go to 10. We as an industry, I wouldn't be getting too down right now. I'd be thinking about growth, not and really thinking about how you're going to grow your business.
Seth, I'm through my own auction business and my interactions with agents, I can tell you in Sydney, house prices are dearer now than what they were before COVID. There's no question about that. Like, there's no
media's
question.
Not telling you that.
6 out of 8 on Saturday. The week before, I think it was 9 out of 10. These are all strong results. There's no question about the units where there's an oversupply of units in a marketplace. I can see that you're struggling to shift those, but houses and unique kind of units, they're going. I'm really curious to get your views on vendor paid advertising, right? Because of COVID, during COVID, and your views going forward.
Yeah, so this is really interesting because we're seeing we get daily data on where it's at, and so when we started COVID, the average campaign in Australia, and we deal with 75,000 of them, was $4,500. So obviously bigger in Melbourne and Sydney, but $4,500. During the first 3 months of COVID, that dropped down to 3.5. It dropped by 30%, and it's been creeping back up, but it is still below where we were in COVID. So pre-COVID, sorry. So it's about 4.4. So it's just coming back. But if you sort of look at what we're seeing among the top agents over the last really 6 weeks as spring kicks in, is they are back in business and they're back asking for $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 campaigns. So we're seeing agents getting courage again. We're seeing them getting confidence, and I'm a firm believer in vendor paid advertising, that it's about the agent, not the vendor here. It's about the agent having confidence that I can ask for the sale and I can ask for the pitch. And the big shift there is, in many cases, they don't have a newspaper to put that funding into, so they are spending $2,000 or $3,000 on a customized Facebook campaign. They're putting in $1,000 social media campaigns. They're doing beautiful video and VR campaigns. And it's not uncommon to see $2,000 or $3,000 to the photography and VR. And it's not uncommon to see $9,000 or $10,000 being spent on the, let me call it the internet bundle, consisting of all different things. And that's hugely different than 6 months ago. Right? It was so rare for us to see more than $6,000 digitally. For us to see $10,000 digitally in a space of 5 months, that's almost 60% growth. I've never seen as big a shift in my career in the composition of the budget, I guess. So that's interesting. And for those of you who are thinking about asking for vendor paid advertising, now's the time. I think it really is a chance to get out there and use VPA as a point of difference. I think we all know that vendors want an agent in many cases, not all, but in many cases, who's willing to do something creative, to do a marketing campaign that's going to help their property really stand out. And I think with all of the different interesting digital tools, now's the time to ask, and the big guys are.
Yeah, well, I've got to say, and this is, unashamedly a plug for your business, CampaignAgent. Seth, before I entered a relationship with you, I asked about 15 of the clients that you had that I knew were top clients, and they just sort of said, "Hey, Tom, just picture this. You're going in, you're at a living room, you've got to convince a vendor, hey, pick me. I know it's worth $4 million, but trust me. And by the way, pick me over these three other people because I'm better than them. And even though you don't know me that well, I'm not a relative or a friend, I really hope that you trust me." It's called their listing presentation. And then after all of that, to sort of say, "Hey, by the way, before I leave here today, I do need you to sort of open up that drawer of yours and pull out 10 grand as well," right? And
Right.
I've got to say, I spent a lot of my life. The fact that I ended up moving into media was because I mean, I got hired. I was a trainer telling people, "Hey, it's really simple. More bums on seats equals more people. More
Right.
people equals more attraction, more momentum. You can't sell a secret. Everyone wins." And the media company, Michael Hannon, who ran the Wentworth Courier, said, "Mate, there's some guy there that's got Rain and Horn, Double Bay, spending 70 pages a week. Let's get this guy to come and work here." So I was a big believer of it, even before
Absolutely.
I actually entered the world of media. But I did have challenges because there was a friction point, and the friction point was, hey, I mean, an agent had to make so many sales at a listing presentation, right? And then to sort of hop into their BMW or whatever car that they had outside with a check from the owner was just another friction point. And those 15, 16 clients I interviewed that said to me, "Tom, there are some things in life that instantly work," and it was campaign agent. You know,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
you got to be
It's funny in that.
proud of that product.
Well, listen, it's been fascinating, right? I mean, and in that sense, we've got clients in the Double Bays and the Turaks of Melbourne, and all of them, they're so bloody good. I mean, they're just so good at their job. And you sit there and you say, and they say, "Seth, I get it up front." And you're just thinking, I'm talking literally to the best salespeople on the planet. And of course they do, because they're the best salespeople on the planet. But when we started this journey, and to your point, and said, "Guys, just ask the question. Just ask the guy who I know you can get the money up front from. I just know you can. But ask him the question, do you want to pay now or pay later?" And just see what happens. And Tom, it was fascinating, because we had a theory, and when you start a business, it's a theory, right? You don't know if it's going to work in reality. But and it turns out, if you ask that question, whether you're in Turak or Vaucluse or Double Bay, it doesn't matter. Is 60% of people are going to say, I'll pay later. And no matter whether they're selling a $20 million house or a $5 million apartment, just removing that friction and letting them get on with their lives is awesome. And I think as an industry, we are going to get back into the living room asking for big campaigns. I think we're going to go into our first recession in lots of ways. Housing's good, but we're still in a recession. We can't forget that. And giving choice is going to be key. And giving vendors options in everything we do is going to be really important, and certainly payment's one of them.
Seth, I'm curious. You know that you've done 75,000 campaigns. I'm curious. Is the attraction more the convenience of, "Hey, man, I'm just not going to have to worry about this now, and they can handle it," or is it more the fact that people are cash poor, asset rich at the time of signing up a listing?
Yeah, that's a smart question, Tom, because the short answer is it depends. If you're in a working class suburb and you're dealing with vendors who some are cashed up but some aren't, then it's about you're giving genuine financing options. I don't have $4,000, Mr. Agent, that I can pay for it. But when my partner and I, Sean, started this business, we sat down with the president of Visa, of all people, and he told us a story about Tap and Go. And he was originally the MD of Australia. And he said, "Seth, listen, when we launched Tap and Go, we increased transactions by 800% in 6 months." I said, "Well, how'd you do that?" He said, "We reduced friction." So Seth, all we did was simply being able to tap and go was so much easier than swiping and typing in your PIN. By saving an extra 5 seconds, we increased it by 800%. And what we realized in the living room, if you can reduce friction for that vendor, if you can make it one less thing they need to get out their credit card and pay a $10,000 marketing campaign and think and stress about that, you are going to make it that much easier for them to say yes, which is why you're going to, when you give them the choice, people spend more. They throw in staging, they do maintenance, they spend more because you're doing what great businesses do. You're reducing friction. And so in the richer areas, Tom, where they do have cash, it's a friction thing. Poor areas, it's a finance thing.
Seth, I'll tell you the thing that, perplexes me the most. And I've still got a relationship with news and realestate.com, and I'm still perplexed to this day right now. This digital options, this, like, I had a call today. I'm in Terrigal for a couple of days having a bit of a break. And I had a call today, and the guy goes to me, I've got this great campaign, I'm going to put $5,000. You reckon I should just boost it? And I said, I mean, it's easy for me to just say on the phone yes or that. I wish I had more information, but it seems so easy that an agent automatically thinks, oh, I'll get some money off people and I'll just boost it, right? There's one line of thinking. There's another group of people. There's a heap of property, social media companies. There's probably, say, 6 or 7 ones that are quite popular. I'm perplexed with the amount of digital options for vendor paid advertising. I mean, are you in a position now to say, hey, this is working, it's too early, or is this a lot of hype? What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting, Tom. Certainly, there's a lot of hype, and I think there's a lot of stuff out there that is selling on metrics that don't matter. So there's a lot of products out there which talk about, I mentioned before, 250,000 impressions, and that's a meaningless number. And by that logic, 250,000 impressions is better than 200, and that's a big no, because the reality is 200 qualified impressions are much better than 250,000 impressions that are going to a click farm in Russia. And I think that it's, as agents go through this, and boy, they're getting good at this. Like, we're seeing some enormous sophistication developing in the industry, but that digital, well, you need to do what digital people do, and digital people always talk about A/B testing. So they say, great, we're going to test something, and so I think this is buyer beware. When you're sitting down with all of these products, it's hard, but boy, do you need to test them, and you need to test them against their competition in a real world environment, because it's anybody can get you 250,000 impressions. It's about getting the right impressions and reaching buyers. It's really easy to get stuck in a click farm in Russia, and that'll get the impressions, but it certainly is not going to deliver people to your door.
That is, yeah, Seth, and I had a digital agency sit with me 3 weeks ago, and they said, mate, we're going to help your clients find their customers. And he pulled out all these big numbers. I said, listen, I get lost with numbers. All I can tell you is we know who our customers are. They own houses. We actually know where they live. We know who they exactly are. Right?
Yeah, it's funny, Tom. I mean, in that sense, print ain't going anywhere. I mean, because at the end of the day, I was talking to one of our good friends down here in Melbourne, and he said, mate, listen, I'm sick of these propeller heads. My clients are literally, they're a kilometer in this direction, and I just get my sales guys to walk out and put stuff in their letterboxes. So, I mean, I think there's, in a crazy world, that does still work. I mean, at the end of the day, we're the only industry that's blessed with the fact that we physically know where every single one of our customer lives, so we can go out and talk to them, whether it's door knocking or whether it's sticking something in the letterbox. So.
You still believe in letterbox drops?
I was having a chat with Betty Ockelander just last week, and I could have kissed her, because she said, "Oh, listen, Seth, a lot of my clients are complaining about the environmental impacts of print, so I stopped doing letterboxing." I said, "Oh, how'd that work for you, Betty?" And she said, "Oh, I didn't get any phone calls either for listings or for the environment, so I've gone back to doing drops," which I thought was fantastic, because yes, you can stop dropping, but at the end of the day, I would challenge anybody to figure out a better way to talk to a vendor who they live in 5 Smith Street.
Seth, I interviewed Stuart Bourne, a Rain and Horn guy, during the week. I said to him, "What's your prospecting strategy?" He goes, "Oh, I don't want to say it on video because people are going to think that I'm lazy." I said, "All right, well, tell me now." And I said, "Right." And he goes, "Oh, I do 8,000 letterbox drops every week, 50 weeks a year. Don't stop. 8,000. And I said, all right. So then what I did is I pulled out a calculator, and it worked out to being $75,000 in print costs and distribution to get those
Right.
done, right? 75 grand. And then I said, oh, that's a fair bit of money. He goes, yeah, but he goes, I sold 120 houses and I've sold 100 houses there, 100 houses a year for 5 years in a row. Then I've got Josh Tesselin, who's totally crushing it. So I can't help it but think to myself, letterbox drops work.
Yeah, listen, I have no doubt they work, and they work when they're done consistently. I mean, but digital works too, right? But it's always funny, and I think the danger I would give around to all of my clients is, listen, if you sit down and tell me that you're doing Instagram, Facebook, Google, and DoubleClick, whatever your strategy is, and you're thinking that's a multi-channel marketing strategy, you're kidding yourself. Multi-channel means you're going to want to use some print, you're going to want to use outdoor, whether it's signage, whatever it might be. Absolutely, you're going to want to do amazing digital. In fact, you want to go invest the majority of the spend in digital, but make sure you're using multiple channels. Because I assure you, I have not met a real estate agent in 2 years who hasn't told me that their entire marketing strategy is around digital. That's great, but it means that there's a wide open set of opportunities elsewhere. And I think we all know that to really find success, you go where your competitors aren't.
Yeah, well said. And marketing, whether you're, Apple, whether you're Google, whether you're News Corp, Nike, we clearly know if you look at the mediums that they use, there's a strong message. Marketing works in combination, not in isolation.
Absolutely.
They know,
Absolutely.
Now, Seth, one of the things I wanted to get your view on is, let's assume that Melbourne in 3 months is like Auckland. And when I talk to people in Auckland, they say it's like COVID never happened, right? People are moving on. Let's assume that happens, right?
Yeah, please.
Can I ask you, do you think everything we're talking about then becomes redundant and people go back to the way that we were, particularly these, digital products you were talking about earlier on, digital signing and, campaign management?
Yeah, that's interesting, Tom. So a couple of things we're seeing, and I'm sure lots of people in this audience, because I know there's some pretty savvy, sophisticated people there. What we've seen is lockdown comes off, the ability to engage with people via Zoom decreases. It's still infinitely better than it was. But during lockdown, you could get 20 people on a call and you could do training, engagement, sales, whatever it was, and everybody was cool with it. What we found is post-lockdown, that does slow down a bit. Some people are like, no, you come and see me. I want you to come and get in your car and see me, which I think in some ways feels like it's a little less productive and it feels like a step backwards. But on the flip side, of course, physically being with somebody is enormously powerful. So I think Zoom will be changed, but it's not going to be all pervasive. We're still going to do a lot of face-to-face. I think the biggest change you're going to see that is ongoing is around the digitization of the sales process. So whether it's real-time agent, realtor, and sign, there's a couple of really interesting products which allow agents to sign the authority or the sales agreement or the Form 6 in the living room, run the entire process from a contracting point of view. It ties in CampaignAgent and other ancillary providers, whether that would be a stager or whatever. Everything can be done and contracted in the living room on the app. If you've got a vendor who's overseas, it automatically emails them. And then the contract of sale then gets produced and managed through that same platform. That was good pre-COVID. It is amazing post-COVID. And I cannot see a possibility of that changing. I think that is the future.
I had a look at Anywhere Auctions. Gary, I always mispronounce his surname, but I mean, I love their product, but their non-auction product where they sign on a screen. I've had a couple of clients show it to me, and I think to myself, like, why wouldn't everyone wins? I can't see why there's not going to be far more of that than, even when things go back to normal. To me, Seth, it's like before fax, after fax machine.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And Tom, I firmly believe Australia has got the most professional, best trained real estate agents in the world, and I've seen all over the world. And I think as a whole, this industry is amazing. However, if I was going to critique us as an industry, we are not great at paperwork. And I think it's because as an industry, as salespeople, we're amazing. We're great in the living room. We're great at our scripts and dialogues, but paperwork is not a strength of salespeople as an industry in general. But it's been fascinating for us as we've moved to fully digital workflows. Error rates drop by like 400%. So you get the exact same guy walks in with a piece of paper and he mucks it up 1 out of 4 times. Same guy walks in with an iPad, and because the digital stuff makes it easier and it does all the calculations, all the rest of it, it's 1 out of 12 times where it goes wrong. Still some errors, humans, and we make mistakes. But every single time you make an error in the contracting process, you're giving a really bad experience to that vendor up front. You do not want to muck up the contracting process. It is a great way to kill confidence in the transaction. And to go from 1 in 4 mistakes to 1 in 12 simply by using an iPad, I don't understand. I mean, I had some guy tell me, I don't want to go out and buy an iPad. I just thought, mate, you just do not have a future in this industry if you're not willing to make a commitment to give 400% increase in your quality to your clients.
Well said. Seth, that's what John McGrath said to me the other day. I told him that you were going to be on. He said, mate, he's one of the smartest. Is McGrath a client of yours?
Absolutely. John's been a huge supporter, and we deal with most of their franchises and as well as head office. They've been great.
Yeah. He highly rates you. Reckons you're one of the smartest guys in the industry. Mate, final thing. I want to ask you. There was going to be a September cliff. It didn't happen. If anything, it's been a September boom. Are you concerned, JobKeeper, that was extended to March? Are you concerned that it's going to impact the economics of the market negatively?
Yeah. So we have a whole risk team in our business that's looking at this stuff, and this combined with the mortgage holiday piece is we are absolutely focused on this. Like we are seeing a shift even since September when that first round of JobKeeper comes. So we're speaking to people who are paying bills and collecting debt every single day, and the short answer is absolutely this is going to shift. And I think agents need to be really conscious of this because you are going to see vendors coming to market under more stress. I think that's a harder sale. They're motivated, which is good. So you're going to get people who are going to transact with you. But as an agent, you really need to think through, how am I going to handle this? I've got a lot of complexity here between the two partners, potentially the bank is involved. So we think that that's going to become a facet. And I think agents are going to need to be looking out for that. I think giving things choice, that's where I think our things like having CampaignAgent for payments becomes important, because people are going to need support as they come through. And this is where, as an industry, I know our sales professionals are all sort of counselors and they're really good at managing tough emotional situations. But we're going to see some of this. And I think we're going to have a good real estate run for the next 6 months. But there's going to be some real heartache and tragedy in there. And as an industry, we need to be prepared for it. We need to make sure we've got the systems for it. And we've also got the empathy for it, because it's, there's going to be some tough stories coming out to all of us over the next 6 and 12 months, we think.
Well, guys and girls, I think particularly those in Melbourne that have got project time up their sleeve, you might have a little bit more time, take the advantage of this time to get your listing presentation to become a 10 out of 10. Take this time to, shift from maybe a 6 out of 10 in being a digitally fit in real estate and improve your skill level and maybe hit up, CampaignAgent.com.au. If you're not a client, I mean, you've got most of the big clients already engaged with you, but if you're not a client, is it the best? Is the best way just to go to the website?
Absolutely, yeah, that's the best way to do it.
Okay, go to CampaignAgent.com.au and begin the communication with them, because I can tell you my own experience is this: when they use this product, they get more VPA. They get more VPA. They pick up more active buyers, more passive buyers. They pick up more active sellers. They pick up more passive sellers. And the biggest challenge we have in real estate, Seth, is being able to have a connection with either a passive or active buyer or a passive or active seller. And what this seems to do is turbocharge the frequency and the quality of the contact with that marketplace. So it is a no-brainer. And yes, I'm probably coming across as a salesperson, but I've always believed that when something's good, when you think something's going to help someone, that you should, you shouldn't pussyfoot around it. Just say, I think it's good for you.
Yeah, no, certainly we're feeling good about what we can do to help the industry. It's exciting times, but we need to be thinking different.
Seth, you don't look like you've put on 10 kilos during COVID-19. So what you've stayed your exercise routine throughout the the 6 months?
Tom, through no planning, my wife and I finished a home gym in our basement 2 months before COVID hit. So we were prepared, and it's I got nothing else to do. I haven't been on a plane in 6 months, so my wife and I have been just working out like crazy. So we've been blessed. We've been lucky, really, but it's been pretty healthy for us.
Phil Harris rang me last night. Who you were talking about Harris before, which was Harris.
They're fantastic, those guys.
Phil Harris, so Phil Harris is both a client of mine and a friend, and he's he's gone out and had a big splurge and extended his home and put in a massive gym, sauna. He's bizarre. I told him I was doing Bikram yoga, and he said, "Mate, I sort of do it as well." He goes, "I put a sauna in and I rip the seats out, and I actually train in the sauna." But I said to him, "Oh, you're putting a gym in?" He goes, "Mate," he goes, "what I learned during COVID-19 is staying mentally fit was important. And maybe I'm like the rest of Australians thinking, mate, my home's my castle. If it ever happens again, I want to be in a position where I can work out and I can live my life as close as possible as to what it was." And then I had another colleague of mine, Andrew Martin, from Melbourne, who I think you know Andrew. He works at News Corp. He's the real estate manager at News Corp. And he said to me, "Tom, out of everything, that's happened in Melbourne, I've got to say the one thing I miss," he goes, "I get it. You can go for a walk, but if you've been someone that has done gym 5 times a week for most of your life, right?" And he goes, "That's what I probably miss more than anything else. I don't miss the 5K thing. That's not a bigger deal for me. And going into the office hasn't been a big deal because I can do it with Zoom. But just, when it becomes part of your morning or evening ritual, gymming, you miss it when it's taken away from you."
Oh, absolutely. No, and we're not getting the social piece, but I think when you're dealing in a stressful situation, and I got to say, this has been a very stressful situation, and especially in Melbourne. I think your physical fitness and your focus on your body is how you get mental strength. I mean, they're the same, two sides of the same coin. Certainly played out in our family.
All righty, Seth. It is an absolute pleasure having you on. And as expected, you didn't sit there doing some product push. You sat there, looking at the industry, and I can tell that you care about the industry because it's your livelihood. It's paid for your life, and it matters to you. And unlike many, and I'm going to say it, not all of them, but there's a heap of prop tech companies out there that have had no connection to the real estate industry, and they have purely come in with one goal: how can I exploit an opportunity using technology and real estate? Whereas you, my friend, have been there. Today, you've confirmed it, 25 years. I thought it was 30, but it was 25 years in the industry, with your print, with, all the letterbox drop work and, the work you've done for, News Corp and all these other big publishers. Yeah, I mean, you care about the industry. Anything you want to finally say to your Melbourne brothers or sisters?
Listen, I think I would only say that the energy, excitement, and passion I have seen out of the Melbourne agents over the last 2 weeks, the entrepreneurialism has been an inspiration, and I think the ability for this industry to adapt and deal with the toughest possible circumstances has just been absolutely breathtaking watching everybody do it. And it's going to be a great spring, a late one, but a great one.
Love it. All right, guys and girls, Seth Watts, campaign agent, have a great week. And don't forget, it's always a great idea to have a view and a belief that the future is going to be far better than the past. And what's coming is better than what's gone. So signing off.
Thanks, up.